This video is brought to you by BTI Institute, a New Jersey leader in certification-based management training.
To the whole list of acronyms, when you're an Agilist. So a little bit about Nitin and I. Basically, we're very active in the chapter. We've done a number of monthly meeting presentations, and let me get this out of my way. And I basically am currently working at a bank, and I'm the lead Scrum Master and Agile coach. And pretty much I'm working with people in the US, India, and Poland. We have what we call studio teams in Poland and India, where basically it's like a five or six person squad of members who are able to actually move into a project and deliver it and then move on to the next one. And I'm very active as far as, and currently I'm actually working with a waterfall team. It's a very strategic mainframe application that I'm working with, and we're actually talking about it and figuring out how they can actually move from that waterfall process that they follow with hundreds of pages of documentation into Scrum. And as you probably know, if you've worked with me, you know I'm very passionate about Agile, and I really enjoy doing these sessions and sharing my knowledge. So Nitin, you want to go next?
Yeah, sure. So I'm Nitin Khanna. My name's a palindrome too, just like Bob. That's why we get along so well. And Bob is right on, with so many certifications out there, it's hard to keep up. And it seems that every time we revisit this, there's a tad bit more that we try to tack on. Started being immersed into agility around 2010 with a hyper-productive Scrum team. That means they weren't only doing X amount of work that they forecasted, but they did a lot more, and they delivered every 2 weeks, and it was bug-free. And that was just mind-blowing. I was very curious as to how all of this came together. We had a great Scrum Master, and I started formalizing some of the training, and I took some product owner training, then the Scrum Master, then got into coaching. And as more and more organizations started to embrace this, there were more certification and scaling, and how do you work with the DNA and just move it across programs and portfolios. So seen all kinds of implementation, from startups to teams that have just started and been doing this for about a year to people doing this for a lot longer. I've seen people thrive, and I've seen teams tank. So had a range of experience in the life sciences, banking, got into consulting. I'm in the market right now. So spending some time engaging in the community and volunteering. So that's a little bit about me.
And basically, if you've worked with Nitin and I and you've seen us present, we basically bring two different perspectives. I'm usually wearing a suit and Nitin's not. That's just one thing, but we do share a common philosophy, and it definitely works. All right, so Nitin, you want to go over the agenda?
Yes, let me just switch to the share screen. So we'll talk a little bit about what certifications might be good for you. We'll talk a little bit about the Scrum Alliance, which is one of the certifying bodies. Then Scrum.org came a little later, established by Ken Schwaber, one of the Agile signatories of the manifesto. And then PMI also came about with a certification a little later. And then we're going to make a few comparisons with the alphabet soup. Scrum Master and Product Owner are the most common, most popular. And then we'll talk a little bit about our journeys, and we'll make a few suggestions.
All right, so pretty much, one question you probably have in your mind, what's the right certification for me? And unfortunately, the typical MBA answer would be, it depends. The next thing would be, if you're trying to break into the Agile world, probably if you don't have it, you would go for your CSM or PSM. If you need to increase your adaptability, maybe you choose the Pmi Acp, because the Pmi Acp focuses more than just on Scrum. The first bullet is Scrum only, but the PMI Acp touches all the different Agile frameworks that support the Agile values and principles. The next would be if you're a company, it's a big company and you're trying to scale a number of teams, maybe you might want to consider going for your Safe Agilist certification. Our chapter offered a class where people who went were able to get the SA certification. Just as a warning, if you took that class, your certification does expire every year, so you do have to pay a renewal fee, otherwise you will lose it. And then if you really start getting engaged, then you could actually go for coaching and actually start pursuing coaching certifications. And a great one is offered by the Agile Coaching Institute. It's called the Agile Certified Coach, which is a really good credential to have. That's basically would be your foot in the door to start coaching. And then basically, as your journey continues, you could ultimately go for the CSP, which is the Certified Scrum Professional, where basically if you take the classes that we've listed above, you'd actually have the SEUs to apply for it. And we're going to get into a little bit more detail as far as what that certification is. And then basically, I guess I'm going to give everybody back almost an hour, but no, unfortunately, we're not done. And there's a lot more behind this. So for the Scrum Alliance, when I first started, they had the CSM, CSPO, and CSD. CSM stands for Certified Scrum Master, CSPO is Certified Scrum Product Owner, and CSD is Certified Scrum Developer. And then basically from there, they had the CSP, which was the Certified Scrum Professional. And when I was doing it, basically there was just one CSP. It wasn't differentiated between Product Owner and SM. And then also they have the CSP for developers. And this would be your ultimate certification because it really demonstrates that you do have proficiency as far as Scrum. And what they do is they give you a path. So you would start out with your CSM. And then after you've been doing that for a year, you'd go for your ACSM, A meaning advanced CSM. And then after doing that for another year, you could then apply for your CSP, your Certified Scrum Professional. And pretty much that's the path through the Scrum Alliance. And right before the meeting, I started thinking, it's a little bit confusing because everybody's pretty clear. You go for your CSM, you have to, sign up for a course, and then you take a test. Well, the ACSM is pretty much the same thing. And this is all on the scrumalliance.org website. So I'm not going to actually go through this, bullet by bullet. But what I wanted to share with you is you do now need to attend a certified ACSM class. So initially, you just had to take a CSM class. So now to get your ACSM, you have to take another class with a certified Scrum trainer. And then you also have to demonstrate 6 months of experience. And I was quickly looking online and I saw some of those courses offered for around $800. The CSM classes I've been seeing, on average, I've been seeing around $1,000 because they're all remote now. And then finally, to get your CSP, there's another class that I, again, briefly looking online, I saw some offered at the $1,500 range. So there's definitely going to be some investment if you want to, eventually get your CSP credential. And all this information is available. And what you also have to do is you have to have 2 years worth of experience before you could consider going for the CSP. And so now, once you have your CSP, you can go for additional certifications. And that would be these three, the CST, which is your Certified Scrum Trainer. And that is basically, it gives you the ability to teach CSM classes, the ones I previously showed. And in order to get certified, you have to be trained by one of these individuals. So it's a very prestigious credential, and it's very hard to get. It's very difficult. What they've also come out with recently is 2 certifications for coaching, because they found that coaching is really important as part of Scrum. So you have the CEC, which is the Certified Enterprise Coach, and the CTC, which is the Certified Team Coach. And these are 2 coaching credentials that you could also pursue after you get your CSP credential. So I'm going to pause and ask if there's any questions about what I just shared, because I pretty much went pretty quickly. And again, all this information is on the Scrum Alliance website. Any questions or anything?
Can I ask, this is Harish, can I ask a question? Is
Sure.
Are these 3 tracks like, or are these incremental? So for example, if I have to be a certified team coach, do I have to take CST and CEC, or these are separate 3 tracks?
These are separate 3 tracks, and you would probably go for your CTC first, the team coach, and then enterprise, because at the enterprise level, it's considered a higher level coach because you're actually coaching the executives in the organization, and the CTC is focused on actually working with Scrum teams and you know, coaching that teams, the individual teams. And then the trainer, you don't have to have the coaching certifications, and you could pursue that. It's something that, you know, I've always been thinking in the back of my mind. I'd love to have that credential, but it's, from what I understand, you know, you have to really be willing to invest quite a bit of time in order to get that. Did that answer your question?
Yeah, thanks, Bob. And these would be 1,500 a pop? Or more?
These you apply for, all right? There's no classes that I'm aware of that you take, okay. But it is expensive. Like, I started working on the CTC, and there's like a $500, what you would call like an application fee that you have to pay in order to even apply for it. And then once you get it, again, I'm just pulling these off my mind, so don't quote me on these numbers. It's like another $500 once you get that certification. And in order to apply, I had to schedule an interview with a CEC or a CTC, and then basically talk about what I was doing and my credentials. And I've been coaching, you know, for a number of years, but I've been coaching as a Scrum Master. And unfortunately, the Scrum Alliance wouldn't recognize my coaching as a Scrum Master as far as meeting the criteria for this certification. Now, finally, my job has evolved where I'm more than just a Scrum Master at my bank, and I'm actually coaching multiple business areas, multiple Poland location people in India. So now I meet that. So, you know, I'm at a point now where I'll be able to demonstrate that I can do that.
Yeah.
Did that answer your
So
question?
let me supplement a few things, Bob. A couple of years ago, after the CSP, the Scrum Alliance only had one coaching certificate. It was called a CSC, Certified Scrum Coach. And what happened is they realized they shot themselves in the foot, because not all companies are working with just Scrum. So it's a bit misleading. It should ideally have been Certified Agile Coach. And then as they were just inspecting and adapting and getting more feedback and understanding what's out there, they split the program into 2. So the Certified Team Coach, and I've been coaching teams as well, is where really you're at the periphery working with several teams, and the enterprise is really working with executives and helping guide them and so on, and they are truly independent. These are not what we call as knowledge-based certifications. These are what we call as competency-based certifications. So you can't just take a test for these. So I'm just using a few different words to describe what's already been said. I was amongst the first to apply for the CTC in a pool of some 25 people a couple of years ago. And I did not get through, and that surprised me for some time. But that's just telling you the rigor and the standard that they have. And the feedback I had was a bit mixed. I had some team-based coaching, and I had some executive or enterprise-based coaching. So it is a very rigorous process. And again, it's just understanding your journey wherever you are, what you've been doing. If you have just been a Scrum Master or just been a product owner, then you've got a long way to go. People holding these credentials are extremely valuable because they have a depth of experience and knowledge. They can really help when it comes to transformations, forming teams, getting them going. So if you find people like this, that's great. Unfortunately, also with recruiters, I'm still saying, hey, we need a CSC, which is no longer there. So it's just good to keep up with these as well. So
thank you.
That's just my ramblings.
Thank you.
Back to you, Bob.
And any other questions about this? Because, and again, the Scrum Alliance website is really good. And one thing that threw me off is there's a link to basically sign up for training, but if you want to actually learn about the certification, you actually just have to click on it. There's no obvious link. It's just, you know, I guess, you know, they didn't ask me about their website design. All right, so now Nitin, he basically has credentials in both areas, Scrum, the Scrum Alliance and Scrum.org. And so Nitin, do you want to share your experience with that?
Yeah, sure. So one quick clue, if you replace the letter C from certified to the letter P for professional, that's the other organization. So Scrum.org was founded by Ken Schwaber a little later, and these certifications are also getting very popular. The one great thing about this is if you are strapped economically or you're paying out of pocket, you can actually take these certifications online because the philosophy is, hey, if you think you know Scrum, then you can take an assessment, which is pretty rigorous. And not only can you do that, but they went up to more levels. So if you really want to challenge yourself, you look at the level 2s that are showing intermediate and the level 3s that are advanced. It's a combination of essay-based questions along with multiple choice. The time box is pretty stringent. A lot of people do not clear these on their first attempt. Some take 2 or more. Earlier on, I ventured and got certified with the Scrum Alliance, but I was just curious as to what Scrum.org was offering. And at that time, the Scrum Guide wasn't completely embraced by everybody. So Scrum.org goes strictly by the Scrum Guide, and they also have a few open free assessments that you can take. And if you are really looking for some solid candidates, they should be at a level 2 or level 3. I'm starting to see a few job postings for that as well. So let's go next, Bob. And similarly, if you are closer to the business, they've now opened up to level 2s and level 3s for your product owner. And the level 3s actually came about towards November of 2019, so not too long ago. And again, essay-based, multiple choice, strict time box. A lot of people don't get this far. There are very few candidates in the world that get level 3s. And again, it's just to challenge yourself, to push yourself, and do you understand the core of Scrum or not? So next one, Bob. Now, Scrum.org, as a certifying body, also has something for scaling. It's called the Scale Professional Scrum, and they work with what's called the Nexus. And then there's the Nexus Guide, similar to the Scrum Guide. They also have something for leadership, something for developers, professional Scrum with Kanban that also has its own guide. And most interestingly, they have something PSU, the Scrum with User Experience, because you often find developers working with information architects or user experience gurus. So I took that on myself because I was an information architect many moons ago. It was quite challenging there as well. So a lot of you may not necessarily be heading towards this side. The PAL certainly is interesting because it's about leadership, and it's people high up that are not necessarily rolling up their sleeves on a day-to-day basis with the team. But this can help guide them into how can they help remove impediments, the mindset, the philosophy, amongst other things. So just know there are a few more acronyms out there with this certifying body.
And
move on, Bob.
Just to add to what you're saying, what these do is it just adds to your tool bag. Like if you're looking for a job, I don't think these individual credentials will get you that job. It's more having the base credentials. But then once you start talking to the company, they'll see that you have a much deeper knowledge and by having these other credentials. Because looking, every now and then you look at job postings and I don't see people asking for PALs or PSUs or anything like that.
Right.
All right. Any questions about scrum.org? All right, this is the PMI Acp. We actually, the PMI New Jersey chapter, we had a class last year, and it basically was a one-day class, and then the rest of it was completed remote learning. We actually worked with the Great PM, GR number 8 PM, and the whole course was something that, you know, they put together, and it allowed people to go through the process and then take the exam. What I believe is that this certification is picking up, and I think business is starting to realize that to get the CSM credential, you have to take a 2-day class and take a test. And if you pay attention in class, you're going to pass. To get this PMI ACP credential, you have to sit down for a 3-hour exam, not quite as bad as the PMP, which is 5 hours. And you also have to demonstrate experience. And that to me is what's going to really differentiate this credential. Where if you're a PMP, you already meet the general project management experience, but you need 2,000 hours. And then you also have an additional 1,500 hours of Agile project experience. So we're talking close to 2 years worth of experience in order to get this credential. And it's very similar to like the CSP, where you have to have the 2 years worth of experience before you can actually go for that credential as well. And if you, we're going to be offering the PMI New Jersey chapters. We're going to be offering an ACP class again once you know, we're allowed to meet in person. So it's something to think about, and it's a good credential. And just like the PMP, it's always going to get harder. So, you know, the question is, if you're thinking about it, I wouldn't wait until they decide to make the test a lot harder than it is today. Any questions about the PMI ACP? All right, Nitin, you want to share some comparisons?
Sure. So some of what I said earlier blends into this. You can take the PSM through scrum.org with self-study. It's a little cheaper. And the great thing is you don't necessarily need to renew this year after year or every 2 years. The philosophy being, hey, if you're certified once, that's all it is. And then you just continue on your journey and your path. So I decided to just have a few categories. So you certainly have the organization up top. The cost, the CSM is a little bit more pricey because it's 2 days in person. In contrast to the PSM, one is $150. It used to be about $100, $120, but it's gone up a little. And then if you want to go for the level 2s or 3s, it's a little bit more. The CSM does need a 2-day course. There's one small little known exception, is if you have a few hours of coaching by a certified Agile coach through the Scrum Alliance, they can recommend that you take the CSM course online. You also have some people doing the CSM over 3 days, so it's nicely spaced out. And it's typically 60 minutes or an hour and a half, depending if you want to go for your level 2s or higher. And these are entry level. So for their CSM or PSM level 1, anybody can take it. It's not that grueling, as Bob had indicated. Multiple choice with a pass rate, and with Scrum Alliance, it does have to be renewed every 2 years. If you have any higher certifications with the Scrum Alliance, once you renew your topmost, the ones below that automatically get renewed. And all of them are PDU eligible. So let's look at product owner comparisons, Bob. It's going to be very similar.
I have a question. If I decided to spend $150 and take the PSM test, and I don't pass, what happens? I lose my money?
You come a little disappointed. We have a chit chat. I scold you a little bit. And then yes, it's just an assessment fee. And if you want to take it again, you pay another $150. Now, for professional Scrum Master, they also offer 2-day courses with Scrum.org, and you get one free try with that. So again, it's use it or lose it, and hopefully you've done enough prep that you don't lose it. But certainly, people get a little antsy when you get to level 2s and level 3s. That's where you have to be a little careful. Like, oh, should I spend the money? Should I study more? And when do I do it? And blah, blah, blah. But yeah, if the money's gone, it's gone.
Thank you, Nitin.
Fire department has high school graduation parade.
So look at the next one. Oh,
Okay.
oh, there is product owner. So something similar. Scrum Alliance offers a certified Scrum product owner, or CSPO. The one thing that's a little different here is when I took it years ago, you were certified right away. They did not have an exam or a minimal score. It still had to be renewed every 2 years with what are called the SEUs and PD eligible. Again, with Scrum.org, you can either choose to take a 2-day in-person course and get one free try, or it's about $200 to take that exam. Multiple choice, 1 hour, look at your level 1s, and you don't have to renew it. And as you go up to level 2s and level 3s, it gets very pricey. I have both the CSPO. I took it many years ago when there was no test, but I still wanted to just explore Scrum.org, and I had a very different experience, and I went up all the way to level 3s. So through a lot of comparison, let's open up to any quick questions. Something may have come up in the chat. It just flew by my window. For entry-level Scrum certifications between CSM and PSM, do you have any recommendation? I would ideally recommend a 2-day in-person course, be it PSM or CSM, if you are heading towards a Scrum Master track. I like to take a CSM because it's very engaging, very hands-on, a lot of exercises. It's not all PowerPoints. And then what I ask people to do is, if they're willing, to supplement it with doing a different certification to Scrum.org. So the fundamentals of Scrum are the same. And if you, let's say, did the CSM 2 days, then get your PSPO through Scrum.org. Or if you reverse that, if you're going towards a product owner track, do a 2-day in-person product owner, and then do the PSM through Scrum.org. Right now, because of COVID, it's a little difficult. Since everything is virtual, it's really up to you. I like the PSMs if you want to go to level 2s and level 3s. And to me, that was enticing. All right, Bob, tell us about your journey.
Okay, well, it all started with the CSM, and I took I chose to take a 3-day class in New York City. The first 2 days was the core course, and the third day was more of like a workshop where we actually modeled how you could actually, apply what we learned. I found it to be very helpful. And that's basically what was my first certification. Then when I was at Teach for America, they brought in trainers, and this is a model your companies could follow, where Teach for America offered the space and provided the food, and then the trainer came in and trained up to a certain number of Teach for America employees for free, and then the trainer was allowed to bring in outsiders. So it was a win-win for Teach for America, and I was able to sit through the class, and when I went through it, I was able to get my CSPO without taking an exam. And I get a little bit hung up about all the acronyms, and so I decided to basically stay away from the Scrum.org track. So this is something that Nitin and I have kind of been having a little bit of a fun conversation between us. So basically, I don't have any Scrum.org certifications because I figured having the CSM was enough. So then from there, There's the ACSM and the ACSPO. However, when I was doing my journey, again, like I mentioned about the PMI Acp, it's better to do it now than wait. These certifications didn't exist, so I didn't have to take them. And also, I went for the CSP, and when I did it, basically I had to really fill out a extensive application demonstrating my experience as a Scrum Master in order to earn that credential. And when I earned the CSP, they changed it afterwards, where the CSPs had 2 tracks. One was for Scrum Master and one was for PO. However, since I did it, I got the CSP before that, and I had my CSPO and CSM certification. They gave me both credentials, the CSP Scrum Master and the CSP Product Owner. And then basically, since I have the CSP, I've chosen not to do the PSM2 or the PSM3. However, I've worked with people at the bank, and the bank, we had an Agile office that kind of changed. And initially they were thinking of following the Scrum.org certification. So I could have found myself, with the whole PSMs as well, but right now I don't have them. I've worked with I've worked with a PSM2. Never have I worked with a PSM3 until I met Nitin. And then basically my journey continued, where I went for the PMI Acp. And again, I'm not going to read this chart to you, but it's really a great credential. And if you don't have it, and especially if you have your PMP, you definitely want to, try to get those hours, try to take maybe the PMI Acp class that we're going to be offering, because it's really a good credential, and plus it's backed by PMI. Then for scaling, I started looking at the different scaling types of certifications. There's less large-scale Scrum. So I actually, when I signed up for a class, I made sure to sign up for Craig Larman, who actually invented less. And it was a great class. It's a 2-day class. And what I found to be really interesting is I was humbled, because I thought I really knew what I was talking about when it came to Scrum. But after Craig took the class through the first day, I was like, wow, there's still a lot more to learn. And that's what's really powerful about, going to a class and getting it taught by the person who actually wrote the book. I then attended the SAFE class that PMI put on, and I now have my SAFE Agilist certification. And I self-funded going for a Scrum at Scale class with Jeff Sutherland, because he was actually teaching a class in Washington with his son, JJ. And I learned that scaling methodology from Jeff directly. And I also was introduced to Scrum patterns, where basically there's like a high performing team pattern that you can actually apply and work with. So that's pretty much been my journey. And then I started moving into coaching. And these are 2 coaching certifications, ICP, ATF, team facilitator, and coach. And this is put on by the Agile Coaching Institute. And I was fortunate to have Lisa Atkins as my trainer. And it was a 5-day boot camp where they basically gave out both credentials. The 2 days was spent on facilitation, and 3 days was spent on coaching. And facilitation, it was really helpful because they taught you ways where you could facilitate better. And that totally changed my whole trajectory as far as my outlook. And after taking that boot camp, there was not an Agile interview that I was ever scared of again, because I really found that I had a good grounded education. And it was a little bit pricey. It was $3,000. And what I did was I tried to get my company to pay for it, and they wouldn't. So I ended up having to self-fund it. And what I did is I waited to the very end of registration, and hoping there'd be a spot in the class. And then I asked for a discount, and I was able to get some level of a discount. So it doesn't hurt to ask. Then I pursued my IC Agile expert in Agile coaching. And this was competency-based. And this was probably one of the hardest certifications I've ever done, where I had to actually do video recordings and demonstrate competency in coaching, facilitation, training, and and mentoring. There's a typo here on this slide. And basically each of those areas, Lisa Atkins was the one that actually reviewed me and actually graded me. They had this whole matrix and stuff like that. It was very intense, but I really learned a lot. And next on my list, as I mentioned earlier, I'm definitely going to be looking at the Certified Team Coach and the Certified Enterprise Coach from the Scrum Alliance. So Nitin, do you have anything you want to share?
That was a lot, Bob. I don't know where to start. I do applaud Bob for earning his competency-based certification, as he mentioned. Very few people across the world have that. And it is a rigorous assessment, and it's not something like a test you can just take. So again, well done, Bob. That's great. All right, let me go down memory lane. So my journey started with intro-level certifications as well, with Certified Scrum Master, with a gentleman named Michael James, who usually wears a black cowboy hat in his profile pictures, and the author of ScrumTrainingSeries.com, which are these free animated e-learning modules. And I was just blown away at the 2-day class. First, I was a little hesitant. I was like, why do I have to do it in person? Why isn't there a self-study option? But then I realized there is a richness to the interaction and the engagement of the courses, which then let me be even more curious. So I explored the product owner track. I was a product owner with a company while I was doing this, and our Scrum Master was leaving. So I said, let me just explore what a Scrum Master does. But then there was a lot more that we were not applying or using. Once this was done, I was curious about Scrum.org certifications, and they offered a few different levels. So I said, you know, let me just do my PSM and product owner. And then I said, there's a developer track. I got that as well because I was engaging a lot with development team members who had this engineering mindset, and DevOps was coming up as well. Got the leadership certification. I found that to be simple. And then the PSU. All of these acronyms, starting with the letter P again, go by the Scrum Guide, and anything else beyond could be an interpretation of Scrum or something diluting. So you have to be very close to understanding what Scrum is and what Scrum is not. So what happened next, Bob, after this? The advanced certification. So when I took the CSP, there was only one option. It was a proctored exam, very similar to the PMP or Pmi Acp. And unfortunately, I wish they had made this as a certified agile professional or CAP. Because again, this isn't just about Scrum. They're talking about Lean and Kanban and XP and a multitude of flavors under the agile umbrella, as they say. And I actually compared this certificate to Pmi Acp because the agile certified professional does look into a multitude of those flavors. And eventually they phased out how it could be taken, so it's no longer proctored. It became, as Bob said, you have to apply for it, and somebody interviews you, and someone's looking over the applications, you earn your SEUs. That's how it worked. I got my level 2s, moving on to Scrum.org, and my level 3s. I think I was number 121 in the world to get my PSM level 3. And I'm like, hey, that's another palindrome. That's cool. They also had something called the PSE, Professional Scrum Expert, that's now defunct. So let's look beyond. I think the next slide is more on the Pmi Acp and scaling. Yeah, I was number 7, I think, in New Jersey to get the ACP. And I still remember I was driving to this proctored test-taking center, and I got a camera ticket that I really wanted to contest, and I was in 2 minds, but I was like, hey, I passed Pmi Acp, I don't know what to do. And again, I compared this to the CSP. Next one, Bob, is probably getting into scaling. Yep. So the Scaled Agile Academy was offering a multitude of courses, and I became a SAFe SPC in 2015. That allowed me to host and hold 2-day courses and prep people to take a test, and then they would be certified. I had already started scaling. Now, there were other frameworks where you could use prior to SAFe, but they did a great job marketing and getting into the market, that I was still curious about other organizations. So then I started also looking at Craig Larman and Bus Bodie. That's the next slide, with less. What's the next slide, Bob? Oh, sorry, exactly here. The CLP was there. Go back one, I'm sorry.
Yeah, I was waiting, and I said, okay, you insisted, so I did it.
Right there in front of me. So Craig Larman and Bus Bodie actually had less much earlier. So that was the April 2014 that I took it in New York City. And the Scrum Alliance was promoting them. If you could go to their site, you say, hey, do you want to learn about scaling? Because there really isn't any scaling certificate or program directly through the Scrum Alliance, but they recognized Craig Larman and Bus Bodie. They're also recognizing Scrum at Scale with Dr. Jeff Sutherland as well. One proud accomplishment is the Nexus Plank owner. I was the first in a class of about 25 people with Ken Schwaber in December 2014 when they opened up to scaling. That time they did not have a certification. It was just called Scale Professional Scrum. It was the Nexus. They had the Nexus guide. And then eventually I got certified there as well. What really intrigued me was the different approaches there were when it came to scaling. And what helped me was when talking to recruiters or management to say, hey, we all know what one of these can give you, but is there a way we could compare at least two of these to see if we could go in the right track or maybe borrow from each other? And it was very interesting because when I interviewed with companies that were scaling with SAFe, for example, I had a few questions that were challenging. And what I found was they had tweaked that framework a little bit to come a little closer to Scrum. But every organization does these things a little differently. So it's good to, if you're really getting into scaling, try to understand some of the differences, some of the subtleties between at least two of the scaling models, if you can. So next one, Bob.
You have the SAFe SPC on there.
Yep, I already covered that. First one, so that was with Ken France in July 2015. I let go of my SAFe certification. So I'm a former SPC and I can train on an older version of SAFe. But by the time, you know, if you were to take the test and get into it, it'll be old and outdated. So I become a little rusty there. Scrum at Scale was done quite recently in April. This is when COVID hit, everything was virtual. And what was interesting is when working with Dr. Jeff Sutherland and being one of the class participants, Ian Spence is someone who is also an SPC trainer. So it's very interesting to have two people coming in as gurus, one scaling from SAFe and the other scaling from Scrum at Scale, and presenting this class. So it was a nice distinction. You heard a few things that were common, a few things that were different. And what I really liked about Scrum at Scale is the distinction between the core of the business and the executioners there, as well as those that had more technical know-how, and the core there and how they had to quickly bubble up any impediments on a day-to-day basis. Some great stories as well. I heard something about Tesla and Elon Musk, who would not be part of a meeting if there were more than 5 people. And I'm like, wow, really? Because that gets into efficiencies and scaling and so on and so forth. So let's move on, Bob. So these are a lot of the knowledge-based certifications and some of the competency ones that Bob has said. So Bob, tell us about one potential path we could take.
Again, I just want to emphasize that this is a potential path. Nitin and I are not saying, you know, you have to go do this, but just looking at different jobs that are out there and stuff like that, these credentials that we're showing here pretty much, you know, are showing up. So basically, go for your CSM or your PSM. Again, if you want to save money and you want to become a certified Scrum Master, $150 is a lot cheaper than $1,000. I've seen CSM classes now, because they're online, offer for around $9.95 or so. Also, when you're taking a class, look at who's teaching it. You could usually, you know, look up the instructor, see if they wrote some books. You know, of course, if you can get somebody like Jeff Sutherland as your teacher, you know, definitely grab that class if you have a choice. Then next, you might want to consider going for your advanced CSM and your CSP, or if you're following the Scrum.org path, you could go for your PSM 2 and 3. And as I mentioned earlier, really consider the PMI Acp. It's a great credential. With the whole discipline Agile, I was at IPM Day, the president of PMI stopped by the Agile booth, and I asked him, I go, what's going to happen with the ACP now that you have discipline Agile? And he wasn't really sure. He said he's not sure if he's going to roll DA into the PMI Acp or if they're going to keep it separate. So what that kind of told me was maybe people that haven't taken the ACP maybe should take it now so they don't have to worry about the discipline Agile track. Then if you really, you know, once you're going and once you have the experience, then you could pursue the coaching track and go for the those coaching certifications, the team facilitator and the coach. And that's through IC Agile. And basically from there, keep on learning new things. And before you know it, you'll have a whole list of acronyms after your name. Bob won't have any of the Scrum.org ones, but you will have a whole bunch of certifications that you can be really proud of. Nitin, did you have anything you want to add to that?
No, I agree. Don't go all out crazy like the two of us. Just figure out if you're closer to the business and closer to being a product owner, or, you know, someone working closer with the dev team as a change agent and Scrum Master, to eventually formalizing coaching, should you have that opportunity and should you be heading that way. You can always reach out to us, shoot us off an email or talk, and we can have a conversation as well, depending on your path. Just get a few different suggestions, but try to keep it simple. There's a lot out there. Don't get overwhelmed. Just go one step at a time.
And it's all about really working with teams and really getting the teams to really understand Agile values and principles and helping them apply them to the framework that they chose. And it just so happens that Scrum is probably the most popular Agile framework, but there's definitely other ways teams can be Agile. So now we're going to go into general questions and answers about the certification presentation that Nitin and I just shared. So the floor is open.
Maybe I'll go. From the Scrum Alliance perspective, right, I do have a CSM, a basic one, and then I went into the product owner route, so CSPO and advanced CSPO. I am thinking of upgrading to CSP, and I was just trying to understand, it's like with this new format, it seems like there is no class per se, but you have to attend some meetings and some coaching sessions. Any insights? How do I go about, Bob or Nitin?
Yes.
Go ahead, Nitin.
So there is the A CSP or ACSM course that you could take. That's the intermediary one before you get the ample training and the eligible SEUs. For the Scrum educational units, you could do a lot of things. You could claim something like this. You had a 1-hour meeting on certifications. You could be eligible there. You could read a book. You could volunteer. You could attend a conference. And I would do a multitude of things. One is, if you really wanted to take a course, take the ACSPO, and then just look at their list of other options available. So for example, if you were to have taken the annual Global Scrum Alliance, virtual, that would have gone a couple of days. So it'd been like 7 SUs per day and so on. So there are a lot of ways you can try to mix and match that. So the ACSP, of course, would be something that comes to mind, and then a litany of other activities. Bob, what do you think?
Yeah, what you want to do is you want to get the ACSPO as soon as you can, because if you want to get the CSP, you're going to have to be able to demonstrate two years of experience. They may say you have to be an ACSPO for a year before they let you do that. But again, you could apply for it as long as you have over 2 years, because the CSP credential requires at least 2 years of experience.
So is it like, I do have ACSPO with me, CSPO and ACSPO, I do have it. My question is, like, do I still have to go with a class, because they were charging $1,500 for me to apply for the CSP designation?
You would have to look on the website. Before this meeting, I looked up the CSM, and to get the CSP-SM, you have to take a class now. I'm not sure what the rule is for the CSPO. Well, you know, after we end this meeting, I can look real quickly when we do the general discussion and get back to you on that.
Yeah, thank you.
It's pretty clear on the website. I'll share that with you, after 7 o'clock hits.
Thank you, Nitin. Thank you, Bob.
Is there any other questions?
Bob or Nitin, I have one, just because of the phenomenal number of letters you have after your names. My question is in your work experience, how much are you able to apply of all this, or is a lot of this more for your knowledge and your ability to be able to help in ways like our PMI New Jersey? Because the thing is I know in my firm, while we're doing a form of Agile, I don't think having all of those different certifications is changing what we're trying to do. And that's what I'm trying to figure out, if I'm going to go pursue any of these. What is the real goal when you're tackling these as you apply it to your firm?
That's a great question.
Go
first. All the certifications for me personally help me in some way, shape, or form. Partly because sometimes Scrum evolved, the Scrum guide was updated, try to keep up with it. There was also a point I was correcting the instructors in class, pushing us, hey, you said this, but it's this, and like they were blown away. But don't be a Scrum nut like me. That really won't work in organizations or corporate, right? So what do you do, and what do you take with this? It's nice to keep up with one thing, and you're like, hey, this is the most up-to-date thing, and like, hey, we've already started tilting the boat. We don't want to tilt it too much. Can you just ease off a little bit? I think if you are with an organization that really wants to embody some of this, you need someone who's an internal coach, or you should be able to hire an external coach. And that's the different set of acronyms when it's not necessarily all knowledge-based competencies, but it's to really understand the corporate culture, to reflect it to people, get them the language, and just try to help them figure out what's that small next step. And in order to fulfill that next step, which path could you take? in execution, be it Scrum or elsewise. It could be Kanban, it could be what they're calling a Scrumban, it could be a hybrid. And how do you then navigate from, let's say, one initiative to maybe a multitude of initiatives or something so large that it works at a program?
Got it.
So certainly I see these as toolkits as well. So it's not necessarily, hey, I've got a certificate from Scrum Alliance. Why do I have to go to scrum.org? And that's a fair question. You don't necessarily need to. But if there's an organization that's saying, hey, I've got something like a level 2 or a level 3 or an advanced, that's great. And it's great to have that candidate. But if your organization is not ready to have that person as well, you know, it's going to be an uphill battle for both parties, you know. So I would look towards getting either an instructor so everybody's speaking the same lingo, get some training, pick any one organization, you know. And I've also had some companies that have been creative and they said, you know what, we'll pick the Scrum Alliance, but we're going to send these 2 teams for training, but not all together. One team is going to go on such and such a week with this instructor, and the other team will go the next week with a different instructor. They're still going to have that same acronym, but we want to see what that experience is. And here's an interesting thing. If you are a certified Scrum trainer, part of being that is you need to be able to build your own lightsaber, as the expression goes. You need to be able to hold a class, and the content and the setup might be different, even though the learning objectives are the same. If you go with scrum.org, the content, the material, the book is standard across everything. And this was very interesting to me philosophically. And they're like, well, yes, Scrum is Scrum, the core of it. We want to be able to just share the core of Scrum, and this is it. We don't want to dilute it or give people a notion of how it's different. So very different philosophies. So it's a loaded question, and wherever you are with your organizations, I would really say if you are trying to be a change agent, so like a Scrum Master or a coach, then head towards those. And all the other acronyms are not going to be that important.
Got it.
So Bob, what do you think? That was just my rambling.
Thanks, Nitin. And I know we're at the top of the hour, so I'll be real quick. And we can continue the discussion during the open discussion when we formally end the meeting. I approach the certifications as a learning opportunity, and it, as Nitin mentioned, it's basically it's part of my toolbox. A lot of times, I wanted to learn about less, so I took a class with Craig. It was a lot better than actually reading the book, because I actually got to talk to the person that actually wrote the book.
Right.
And so that was a learning experience, and yes, and a byproduct was yes, I got my CLP out of it. The same thing happened when I went to the Agile Coaching Bootcamp. I got to talk to the person that wrote the book, Lisa Atkins, on coaching, and I learned a lot. And a benefit was I did get those certifications. So you could look at it where you're really shouldn't be in it for the certification. It's more about the learning and about the journey. And what it's done is I've found myself now in a position where they've asked me to coach at my bank every new teams as they join the organization. I have a base Scrum training, Agile and Scrum training presentation that all new employees are now getting, that I actually facilitate. And when people need help, they're struggling, they call Bob. So and I wouldn't be able to do that if I didn't have those experiences and that knowledge. It's nothing really. The certifications are nice, but it's really the knowledge.
Got it. Bob and Nitin, thanks. I appreciate that.
Sure.
Yeah, just a very quick supplementary comment. My first Scrum team that I worked with had this awesome Scrum Master who wasn't even certified. And she was just amazing. And I wish she hadn't left the team, and I wish there hadn't been any reorganization. But the way she presented herself was as such that when she did leave, I was just curious. And I said, I want to learn more about this. So you could have people like that as well.
So with that, we'll formally end the discussion group, and then Nitin and I will stay online, and John will stay online for another 15 minutes if there's any general questions. It could be about this topic, or it could be about anything that you're encountering.